From Pocketnow.com, this is Pocketnow Weekly.
Hello, and welcome to episode 010, or episode 10, of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow.com. We discuss news and opinion from the world of mobile technology, tablets, convertibles, hybrids, smartphones, lots and lots of smartphones. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, senior editor at Pocketnow, and I'm joined as usual by editor-in-chief Brandon Meneman. Good morning to you.
Hello there. And
our semi-regular companion, the man from the desert regions, Joe Levi, the Android guy. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Guys, how are we doing today? I am tired. I went first.
It's 2 hours earlier here, so you don't have any excuse. The sun is just coming up, and it's a wonderful-looking morning.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Joe is joining us from a different time zone, as always, and we're recording a little earlier than usual. So Joe is definitely the MVP of the morning hours. How about you, Brandon? How are things down there in PA?
Good. And you guys were talking about being tired, and I was going to say, I had my coffee. And I promised myself growing up and hearing my parents say that every morning, don't talk to me, I didn't have my coffee, that I would never be that guy or one of those adults that says, I need to have my coffee before I can talk to you in the morning. But I miraculously turned into one of those people. So I'm feeling energetic because I had my coffee. Isn't
that incredible how that happens? You just become the thing you said you never would. Yeah. I didn't get the coffee bug until I moved up to Boston, actually. I never drank coffee in college, and now it's just a necessity of all day long.
So is today's podcast going to be all about coffee talk?
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
Welcome to Coffee Talk Corner.
You guys are so funny.
We had a ton of news this week, and we have to get to it. Before we do, though, there's even news that we didn't get to, which I'll get to when we get to it. LOL at that stupid sentence. Yeah. No, there's so much stuff that happened that we need to talk about. But before we do that, Brandon, you have a window here to speak about what you will.
Thank you for providing me with a window.
Absolutely, you're welcome to it.
So I want to do something involving all three of us and a little bit of role playing.
If like you say role playing, before. I was going to say.
I got iOS 6 yesterday, like the rest of the world, and after installing iOS 6, it was very anticlimactic, if I said that right. I look at my phone, it says, welcome to iOS 6. I'm like, yes, I've got iOS 6. This is great. A new version of the operating system. I swipe through some screens. I sign into iTunes or whatever, iCloud. And then I get back to my home screen, and it looks exactly the same, except this time there is a new icon for Passbook, which, by the way, doesn't even work. It links to the Apple Store, and nothing happens when you do that. And I think to myself, what about all of those other people that install iOS 6? Maybe they're not upgrading to the iPhone 5. Don't they want something different? Maybe Apple should have added a new wallpaper to say, hey, something's new here. Or maybe tweak the dock a little bit to say, hey, we spent a long time on this. We know that you were waiting for your yearly software update, and here's what's new.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the average user, doesn't really see anything different. And then they start using some of the apps. They see Maps is a little bit different. The more advanced users will see that settings have been updated with more settings. There's Do Not Disturb. There's 200 very little features. And so inevitably, this is going to catch up with Apple. And they're going to have to do something big for maybe iOS 7 or maybe iOS 8. Who knows? And so I thought it would be fun if we did a little bit of role playing. I will be Tim Cook. Joe, you can be Phil Schiller. And Michael, you can be Scott Forstall. And we're going to go into a conference room and we're going to talk about iOS 7. We're planning for iOS 7. We're going to release it in about a year, and we want to make sure that we do something different this time so that people like me and the average user doesn't get disappointed when they hit the update button for iOS 7. So
this is exactly the type of scenario I did not foresee when giving Brandon the floor this morning. I am happy that you're keeping me on my toes. This is great.
and I don't want to do this kind of poking fun at Apple. I want to seriously have a discussion, pretending that we're these guys, on what we can do to make iOS 7 different and an iterative, not iterative, but something that's a true revolution. So,
all right. So just so everybody knows what's going on, Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple, obviously. Scott Forstall is the what? He's Mac OS 10 and iOS 5.
He's just the iPhone software guy.
Is he? Okay. All right. Yeah, because I saw I don't watch the videos usually. I read the live blogs, or sometimes we write the live blogs. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then Phil Schiller, of course, is
head of marketing.
Head of marketing. Yes.
And those bits don't really matter. I mean, the marketing guy can talk about iOS software, but just for fun. So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to say, gentlemen, the reviews are in of iOS 6, and people are tired of the same old stuff. We need to do something big for iOS 7. What are your thoughts?
Widgets. We got to do widgets. Finally, after 7 revisions, we got to do widgets. Everyone loves widgets. Maybe gadgets.
We can't do widgets. Android is widgets. We're anti-Android. We want Android to be destroyed. We're going to sue every company until there's no Android left, and we can't go and do what they're doing. So widgets don't work. They slow down the user experience unless we can do them differently.
Well, maybe there's a way to do them differently. Maybe we don't do widgets on the home screen. The springboard is something that people still like. Maybe we do widgets and we call them something different, like enhanced apps or mini apps, and we put them in that notification shade that we haven't been using all that well up to this point. They're accessible on demand. We can drag it down from the top at any point. You can see glanceable information there, and then when you're done, you send the notification shade away, and there's your familiar springboard. What do you think about that?
Well,
iGadgets.
iGadgets.
Yes. Nice. Write it down. Write it down.
The problem with putting them in the notification shade is that for those that don't clear out their notifications, you'll get an infinitely scrolling notification list that's full of iGadgets and a shortcut to tweet and to add a Facebook status, and then you get all your notifications. It's just going to get too long. I don't think we can put it there, guys.
We can put it there. We just have to come up with a method that can automatically figure out which ones are relevant and which ones the user wants, and then we can patent that, and then we'll sue everybody who tries to copy it.
I like that. That's actually
like that
pretty good. So give me an example, Phil. How would that work?
I have no idea. I'm just the marketing guy.
Oh, well, that falls to me in software there. Well, I think, algorithms, we can write some algorithms. I can use some fancy buzzwords here and see how that goes. No, I'm not really a software guy. I think that is a solid idea, though. There are ways to list things by order of priority. Facebook does it all the time. Whether it does it well or not is up to you to say. But I mean, I generally get news only from the people I care about. Once Facebook actually learned who I care about reading the news from, I think a similar thing could be done with the widgets in the notification tray.
So it could be a new API maybe where, for example, the New York Times could start to you could specify your preferences, what kind of topics you like, and when news hits, you get a brief in the notification tray. Or shade or whatever we're calling it, so that it's just new iPhone. No, that doesn't make sense.
Well, right, whatever it is. Yeah. No, you know what? But I think there's an even better way to do it. I don't think you need to specify it. I think we can say to people, the phone will know you, like Google does with that cards thing that nobody uses and that just went down last night. But it's still that's intuitive. That tells you what you want to know, even though you didn't tell it what you wanted to know, because it takes all the information from your interaction with the phone and then extrapolates. I think we can do that.
Yeah, we got to be careful, though, because the more the phone knows about you, the more creepy it's going to seem. So we got to watch that creepy factor.
You make a good point there, Phil. Siri's not creepy at all, so I understand where you're coming from.
Well, she sounds creepy, but we meant for that.
Oh, right. That was my idea.
For Siri, too.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, this is a great idea. I like this notification thing, but we have to figure out what to do about these icons and the look and the feel of just the operating system when you just are on the main screen. How can we differentiate here? How can we do something more useful than what we have now?
Make them round.
Make them round.
We did, yes. Get the iPod team in here. They know how to do that.
We tried that, but our fingers aren't exactly round. They've rounded edges. That's why we
triangles.
Triangles. That's probably even worse.
Interlocking hexagons. Has anybody done that before?
Oh, That's awesome. I bet the fingerprint fits into a hexagon perfectly. And then it wouldn't be a grid anymore. It would be something no one could find anything on. It would be great. They'd spend more time using our products.
The Microsoft guys tried that with Windows Mobile 6.5. We see what happened with that.
Strikes again.
That means we could do it better.
That's right.
It's an opportunity.
We don't have to be first. We'll just be better. It's fine. No, in all seriousness, I have no idea what to do with this home screen. Really, I don't know. I am at a loss for how to change this sufficiently that it's more useful, but not change it so much that people will be immediately lost. Because people value simplicity. That's why we build this thing, right? And that's why we sell. That's why we sell 2 million pre-orders in like a week.
Oh,
we sold 2 million pre-orders in like an hour.
Yeah. I was being modest, Phil, but you're right.
Well, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do for iOS 7. We're going to change the App Store icon to be a little less shiny. And the Safari icon, instead of pointing to the northeast, it will point to the southeast. And the music icon...
Wait. I got something on that one. Let's make the Safari icon that has nothing to do with navigation. Let's make that needle point the direction you're looking. Let's turn it into a real compass.
And while we're talking about icon customization, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here, boys. We're not doing a damn thing with that weather icon, right? That's staying at 73 degrees all the time?
73 degrees and sunny.
That's what we got to
do that. Good. We got to do that.
You made me nervous there. All right, good.
Anyway, that was fun. But one thing I do want to say, I once heard an idea. I don't know where I read this, but someone had this idea where each icon, and the weather icon's a perfect example, should be live information, kind of like Windows Phone 7. But so, for example, if you had a new Facebook message, your Facebook icon would transform into like somehow a mini preview or a symbol or something. But the problem with that is if you have all this dynamic information on your home screen, it becomes really busy really fast, and it's very anti-Apple.
Yeah, I mean, it is Windows Phone. Like, I mean, I agree. That parallel is tough not to draw. If you're
thinking about making those icons literally animate, meaning change all the time, and that is probably the number one thing that drives me nuts about the Windows Phone interface. If you can take an icon that represents weather and do that without putting on what you'd expect to be actual weather data, great, do that and keep it static. But if you're going to represent actual weather data, 73 degrees and sunny, you don't have to animate the icon. You just have to have it get updates every however often you want it to be, once an hour, once every 3 hours, whatever, to reflect the actual information. The calendar, you only have to do the calendar icon once a day and have that represent the actual state, but not animate, not be flashy, not be distracting, just elegantly simple.
Well, I don't know if, I mean, of course, and it comes down to what what your preferences are as far as whether you think Windows Phone it does that in a distracting way. But I see what you mean. What does that do to system load too? I mean, like if you have all these icons animating all the time, I feel like that's been Apple's big excuse, right? Where they're like, we're not going to do that because it slows down performance, and we really, really need this thing to perform well. Is that like still a thing in this era of ridiculously souped up handset hardware?
Well, you can dynamically create an image relatively simple. Speaking as a programmer now, that doesn't take much to do. So creating an icon on the fly isn't going to take much resources, especially if you're not doing it every minute. If you're doing it every hour and then you're just updating that icon and refreshing the screen, I can't see how that would add any more overhead, especially not that some new fancy A6 processor is not going to be able to handle real easy for you. Right. And you're not doing them all. You're only doing the ones that are on the current screen. Now, of course, you can swipe to other screens full of grids of icons very easily, but your first priority is the one that's on the screen that you're looking at right now. And everything else can be background processes that happen whenever it's got time to happen.
It would be very nice. So either of you think we'll actually see this when iOS 7 rolls around about a year from now?
I think we should patent it. Brandon, you got a patent guy?
Maybe. Well, I mean, they have to do something because it's getting almost exhausting now for, I think, even the most devout users. And, you look at some of the iPhone websites out there, sites that are all about the iPhone and iOS, and they're expressing frustration. I mean, their defense of the simplicity thing is becoming less and less effective as Android Jelly Bean is extremely smooth, extremely fast. Windows Phone continues to get better, and iOS kind of just stands still.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I've made that point like so many times in editorials that I've written, particularly even one just this morning that went up that like I'm just so tired of saying it, and it would be nice just for Apple to actually do something to be revolutionary again. I feel like it's a very complacent OS, and I haven't updated yet. I'm still running the iOS 6 beta because I just don't the other platforms that I run that help me in my day-to-day life are more useful to me and that are more interesting because iOS has been so static for so long. So,
I'm reminded of the Galaxy S3 commercial, and I know we'll get to this a little bit later, but where the guy's in line, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you were here last year. You have a Galaxy S3. Why are you here?" "Oh, I'm just holding my place in line for." "Oh, hi, Mom and Dad. Here you go." iOS,
sick burn.
The OS of your parents.
I have not actually watched that commercial yet, so that sounds awesome. Now I want.
Oh, that commercial's hilarious. They're fabulous, hilarious.
Well, let's. I do want to. Joe Levi, the Android guy. I want to talk Android with you some more, but let's get this stuff. Let's cover some stuff that you're not typically vocal about first, because it's been a big week for Windows Phone. You're going to be able to handle this one?
Huge week.
Yeah, massive. Yesterday we saw HTC sort of rekindle their relationship with Microsoft in a very public way by announcing the Windows Phone. All right, let's get this right. The Windows Phone 8X and 8S, which are its first Windows Phone 8 models, and the devices are actually called the Windows Phone 8X and 8S, not just the 8X and 8S. That is a right that apparently HTC had to negotiate heavily with Microsoft to secure, the right to use the platform name and the hardware. I think it's pretty confusing and really not necessary. Yeah. Brandon was there for the unveiling. Right?
Hey, Michael, you running that Windows Phone 8X? Or do you have are you running the Windows Phone 8S?
Oh, the Windows Phone 8X. Well, I run Windows Phone 8. Why is Windows Phone 8X better?
Well, it's got a better camera.
Wait, what you mean the platform it has better support for the camera? What do you mean? Now, I have a Windows Phone 8.
I got 8X and I got a better camera.
Well, how do I run 8X?
You got to go buy it.
I got to go buy it, but can I just download it?
Yeah. See, here's the problem. I was sitting next to Adam yesterday at the HTC press event, and I kept jabbing him every time that when Steve Ballmer came on the stage, it kind of became a little bit more serious, and when Peter Chow was on the stage, because Peter Chow was.
Hang on, Steve Ballmer came out and it got more serious.
I know that stopped me too. I was like, what?
I'm sorry, I just had to stop you there for a minute. Go ahead.
It was an all guns out kind of event, and it's kind of weird because we saw that with Nokia, and to hear that these HTC Windows phones would be the signature Windows Phone devices. What are they talking about? What about Nokia? Is Microsoft pulling a fast one over Nokia? Are they being what's the word when
duplicitous?
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Are they being that? It sounds like Nokia was surprised about this, which is
Yeah, because Nokia came out like not very long after the release and issued this statement of their own where they were like, "Yeah, we're very happy to welcome a new member to the Windows Phone family, right behind the Lumia line." And it's like, wow, all right. So, yeah, I think they were caught a little bit off balance there. And you bring up another interesting thing, Brandon, this kind of, in addition to the Windows Phone 8 device branding, they're being called Windows Phone 8 signature devices. What does that mean? I mean, we have signature Windows devices on the desktop, right? What does that mean? Does it actually mean anything? I don't think it does.
And here's a great point. If you go to windowsphone.com right now, these signature devices are front and center, and then the 900, the 920 isn't even on the front page.
Whoa.
And it's just so weird to me. It's almost as if Microsoft took advantage of Nokia. But then again, HTC is right when they say they've been partners with Microsoft for 12 years. I mean, that doesn't really matter. That was like almost in another life in a different world, and you know, I don't think that counts for very much.
Well, there's something to be said for loyalty, though. You know.
Yeah, but then you have Samsung making a pretty good Windows Phone 8 device, and what's also feels and smells really weird here is that HTC is, what's the word? They're putting their brand second, or even kind of third,
behind the Windows Phone and Microsoft brands.
Yeah. It's not the new. It's a device by HTC. Like, it's a Windows Phone, there's first brand. 8X, there's the second one, by HTC. That's the third one. And it makes HTC look very weak. And it makes me wonder, like, you know, HTC has fallen on some tough times lately. And are they getting that tough to where they're like, yeah, we'll just keep the HTC brand an afterthought? Or did they see it as sort of a strength?
You know, I think it's a very complicated situation. You're absolutely right. HTC is not as healthy as they've ever been, certainly. I think they really need to look at the marketplace and you know, find ways where they can kind of stand out. They're having a hard time doing that in the Android space. Obviously, the One X kind of got its milkshake drunk by the Galaxy S3. So, you know, we're looking at this new platform, which is still kind of a Wild West frontier. Windows Phone 8 is brand new. The adoption rate for Windows Phone 7 wasn't very good. So, but, you know, there are still 40-something% of users out there who are not on smartphones globally. So I feel like HTC is maybe betting on the fact that Windows Phone is going to be successful in capturing some of that, and they really want to stake an early claim in this Windows Phone 8 space. And do you think that this device is enough to do it? Brandon, you had your hands on it. Joe, of course, leap in at any time, but I mean, Brandon, you handled it in your hands-on video. What did it feel like?
Well, first, what do you guys think about the hardware? I mean, just looking at the pictures. I mean, you might have heard that HTC really talked up this design. Before showing it, they referred to it as a new iconic design. When you guys think of iconic designs, name some phones that are truly iconic.
The Lumia, the N9.
Yeah, N9 totally, which is just like the 920 and different from the 820, but it's got that different kind of sliver design. What else? The iPhone, Galaxy S3 would probably be iconic.
Even the G1 or the Nexus one, it's something that represents the entire family of that phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not just HTC, not just Android, but all of that line. Not just iPhone, but that's probably a bad example. Not just Windows Phone, but of all the others, here's the one that when you think of, this is where you immediately go.
Okay, so that's interesting. So an iconic design carries sort of a message. Like, this marks something that happened. Oh, and the design's pretty cool and unique too.
Yeah, I mean, I think iconic is a really. I mean, what is the actual definition of the word? Iconic, of relating to or having the character of an icon. Yeah, thank you. Having a conventional formulaic style used of certain memorial statues and busts. Yeah, so defining a category, right? Yeah, I agree. I think Joe said it best. Yeah, and then they talked about they ran a video, and now it's on YouTube, about the painstaking design process of the 8X and the 8S. It's a cool video too. Yeah, I mean, there's very aspirational quality to it. Very tugging at the heartstrings of geeks everywhere. I like their video.
It was a good video, and I think those videos are becoming less and less effective because every company comes out with a pretty corporate video with a moving song in the background.
Right.
So when they were talking about phones are looking the same, they look like I'm like, yeah, they all look like slabs. They have earpieces at the top, cameras. They have cameras on but they all do look the same because there's only so many ways you can make a phone. And then they show this phone that looks exactly like all other phones, and they did do some cool stuff with it. But I think the 8X, and a little bit less so, the 8S look a little bit generic to me.
Well, and I think way less so. That's what I was going to say. I think the 8X, this is kind of a symptom of a larger problem that smaller phones have become kind of the ignored second-class citizens of the world, and manufacturers are afraid to take their big headlining phones and take a risk with them design-wise. So they'll make the 8X, which kind of looks generic, next to the 8S, which has this kind of cool color band and these inset alternating colors on the earpiece and the camera bezel, and like the 8S just looks so much more unique to me than anything else I see, especially the 8X. It makes the 8X look almost fuddy-duddy, by comparison.
Fuddy-duddy. The heck is that?
I saw that word in a review of the Richard Gere film Unfaithful, and I've been wanting to use it for 10 years. You're welcome.
Yeah. That's a really apt analysis. I've been wanting to use that word since I saw it on The Office.
Nice. A bunch of dreams being realized on the Pocketnow Weekly this week.
It's great. But that's a good point. They were more experimental with the 8S. It's more, they call it a more fun phone, and it is unfortunate that they downgraded the specs for that. I mean, but what's interesting about the 8X is that the screen is not that big. It's only 4.3 inches.
Right, which is hilariously the new small, right? Like 4.3 inches is now the low end. That's amazing.
Which still isn't all that small.
No, it's
historically. Okay, so something I got to get off my chest.
Please.
Windows Mobile, way back in the days, even Pocket PC and whatnot, those were all relatively corporate devices. If your enterprise was running an Exchange server and you had Microsoft apps in-house, chances are you were going to be issued a Windows Phone device, and it was very tightly integrated with Exchange and your contacts and all that stuff. For us end users, and I was an end user who jumped on that bandwagon, I didn't get all of those benefits of having an Exchange server. The devices were utilitarian, they were professional looking, they kind of carried forward with what you thought of Microsoft as, just this big corporate entity. Move forward to where that kind of became irrelevant. You've got the iPhone, which comes in two colors and one form factor, essentially. You've got Android, which is all pretty much the same. You can either get white or you can get black, and they're just kind of understated, but they don't look out of place, a boardroom table. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Windows Phone, and every Windows Phone that I can think of, at least, is brightly colored. It's got bold designs. Whether the bezel is brightly colored or the display itself is brightly colored, themed in blues or reds or whatever, it just doesn't seem corporate anymore. Yet this is what is supposed to fill in the gap at those, those big corporate people, if you will, that they're going to be issuing to all of their employees. And I'm sorry, I love how they look. I just don't expect to see these around the boardroom table or even at a meeting of executive officers or people on down the line. They don't look professional. They don't look like I'd expect to see someone who gets paid way too much money to have sitting on the table. They look distracting in that circumstance.
I envision this guy sitting, at a business lunch, and he's like, "I was about to acquire your company, but then you took out your purple Windows Phone, and the deal's off."
Well, and it's funny. I haven't thought about this argument in a long time, but you're right, Joe. And this is something that people think about. I would get so flummoxed in like message board conversations when people would bring this up, and they'd say, "Well, how am I going to bring this phone? This phone is fun, whatever, but how am I going to bring this out in a boardroom? Nobody's going to take me seriously." And it's been so long, read never, that I've been in like a corporate boardroom environment that I never think about this stuff. But you're right. If Microsoft wants to position Windows Phone as this sort of, yes, consumer thing, but also maybe this BlackBerry replacement thing, which I think a lot of us maybe want Microsoft to be trying to do, but maybe they're actually not trying to do that, then this kind of multicolored approach that HTC and Nokia are taking is not really going to be the way to go. But I made the point yesterday in one of my pieces that this color blast in Windows Phone is actually somewhat rare. I mean, the initial blast of Windows Phone 7 handsets were all black or gray or boring. It wasn't until Nokia kind of came into the scene and were like, "Yeah, hey, check it out, color." And then HTC arguably came along and was like, "Oh, yeah, us too, check it out."
What do you guys think about color? Like, do you want a black or white phone, or do you want your favorite color in your phone? Ever
since Nokia dropped that cyan on the 800 or the N9, then the 800, then the 900, I've been in love with color. I used to value black phones when silver phones were hip, and then I went the other way. No, I prefer color now. What about you, Joe?
I'm looking at your article right now and checking out the Windows Phone 8S. And I'm seeing the black phone with the blue stripe on the bottom and the kind of light gray phone with a yellow stripe on the bottom. I'm thinking, hey, this is great. We've got, first responders, and then we've got medical people, and maybe the Red Cross.
Yes, and traffic cops.
There you go. It actually looks like European cops now that you mention that. But no, what I think we need to do, and I like the colors personally. I don't think I'd probably be as bold. I recently pre-ordered a Pebble watch through Kickstarter, and I had the opportunity to pay an extra $15 to get one of their fancy colors, and I was tempted for a minute to get orange, and then for a minute to get gray, and I just said, you know what? It's a watch. Give me a black watch. That's all I want.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So color I see as customization. So let's go ahead and move technology forward to full screen displays where we go all the way to the edge with the display, and then we can customize our displays however we want. We can get our blast of color there, and then let's have accessory backplates that are different colors, different designs, so that we can customize that and truly make it our own, rather than just saying, my phone's the big, bold red one sitting on the table over there.
Is that a thing? Like, do people still do the backplates thing? Because I know Nokia's doing it with the 820. I mean, do people still, buy backplates and do that thing like it's 1999? Or is that just something companies wish they did? Do we have any data on that?
I'd do it.
I don't know if I
would do it.
I never liked the backplate thing.
It's really frustrating if you have to buy them. I mean, if the 820 came with 4 colored backplates, that would be awesome. I'm not much of a fashionista, but I'd consider matching a backplate to what I'm wearing, on a hot night, a hot date with my wife. But I think I love that idea of switching the backplate, and the way the 820 does it. It's not like a cheap way of changing the backplate. Like there have been some HTC phones where you could change some color part of it, but it wasn't really. It was just like snapping a thing in place, a piece of plastic. But the 820 is like, hey, you can take off the entire back, literally, and put a new one on.
Yeah, I like that. And, if you could build an NFC chip or something into it to say, hi, I'm colored yellow.
Right.
Or I'm this special design, and you could unlock a theme for the front of the phone.
Oh, now that would be very
cool.
Awesome. Well, and HTC tried to do some of that on the software side, some of the stuff you're talking about, Joe. I think they tried to match... Microsoft gave them access to the colors in Windows Phone 8, and they tried to match their software colors to the casing colors as best they can. So when you take, the yellow one out of the box, it's preloaded, to display yellow. I don't know. I mean, I think that's cool. I think that's one of those little things, but they also differentiated on some other things. Like, Brandon, you heard the speakerphone with the Beats Audio. There's a new amplifier. Beats Audio, I think, always featured a hardware amplifier for the headphone jack, but then there's a separate one, which is either 2.2 volts or 4 volts, I don't remember, for the speakerphone. And in the video, you really can't hear it, Brandon, but you said it was one of the loudest speakerphones you'd heard?
It was the loudest speakerphone I've ever heard. And I wrote in my editorial that it kind of sounded like the HTC Surround, but probably louder and better. It was really impressive. I mean, it's if you put an amplifier in a phone, it's gonna probably be the biggest use of battery power of any other phone function.
Right.
So you'll probably be able to get through 3 songs, but it's cool. I mean, that's innovation. That's something different and new that you don't see anywhere else.
Are we ever going to see a vacuum tube inside one of these phones, just for those audio files?
For those nights, you just need the warm glow of the old-fashioned radio lulling you to sleep.
Well, high-end computer motherboards for audio files are coming with vacuum tubes on them for better-sounding audio.
God,
you think we'll ever get a vacuum tube small enough that we could get that same rich quality in a phone?
Be like a sippy straw.
Right, yeah. I figure that's going to be whoever Virtue gets sold to, that's going to be their next differentiator. It's here, it's your 10,000 phone running Android 2.1, but it has a vacuum tube.
It's with vacuum tubes.
What else is HTC doing here? Just on the 8X and 8S, they've got the Beats, and we don't know if it's the same exact camera module as on the 1X, but it is the same image sense chip, or the image chip and the image sense kind of firmware on there.
That was another time I poked at them and I rolled my eyes when they said, "We've brought the acclaimed well-received and highly regarded image sense technology from the 8X, and we've put it in the 8X, and I'm like, well,
yeah,
you know, that would be great if that was actually a good thing. The thing they did that was actually cool with the camera is that the front-facing camera is wide angle. And that it really makes a difference. And, you know, it's a typical scenario where you hold your phone out in front of you and you take a picture of you and the people that you're with. And this tremendously improves the functionality of the front-facing camera. I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, I was impressed not because I care about the front-facing camera, because I never use it. I almost always forget it's there, but because a manufacturer looked at this thing that no one looks at, that nobody cares about, and they were like, yeah, we're going to do something different. Check it out. Here's not only a higher resolution, which is just a lazy way to go, but here's a wide-angle lens, which makes sense because as you demoed in your video, Brandon, you can get an entire, like, third or fourth person in the frame if the whole family wants to get together to talk to grandma in Florida or whatever. And that's great.
And you know, it's also cool because, you know, some camera software has a timer, so you can prop up the phone somewhere, which is very difficult to do, and you can do like a family portrait thing. But that's first of all not wise, because someone could steal your phone if you're in the middle of a public area. So, like, this capability to take pictures with the front-facing camera is very important to phones, and they enhanced it. You know, the wide-angle thing's unique. Bumping the quality of the front-facing camera isn't unique. Apple's doing it with the iPhone 5. Although this goes a step further, it can record 1080p video from the front-facing lens, and the iPhone 5 can do 720p.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, they really thought this out quite well.
So I kind of I want to bring it back to a broad sense here, because I started just a little behind the scenes info for the listeners here, maybe an unauthorized leak from within Pocketnow. I was going to write an editorial yesterday. I've completely expected to write the editorial titled, you know, thanks HTC, but I'm still buying a Lumia 920. Like, I expected to be able to write that. And then when I saw what HTC offered, and it took me like longer than usual to kind of reverse myself on this, I was like, no, actually, that is not certain anymore. So what do you guys think in a broad sense? HTC definitely has a little kind of upset here, an attempt to upset Nokia on its hands. Do you think it's going to be successful? Because Nokia still has some differentiating ability that HTC does not, particularly in Windows Phone 8 software, I feel like, and in the optics on the camera. What do you think is left for Nokia to differentiate themselves on? Like, what is Nokia still winning on?
Well, yesterday when I was feeling that's funny.
Nice.
When I was feeling up the 8X.
That's even better. Yes.
I actually thought it felt a little bit cheap. They've got this wonderful soft touch plastic on the back. I was telling Michael this yesterday when we were talking, and it feels very solid in hand. Well, not solid. It feels like, you know, you've got a good grip on it. That's what I'm trying to say. But it doesn't feel as premium as, and I haven't touched it yet, the 920, as it doesn't feel as. It doesn't seem as premium as the 920. So if I had to choose between the 920 without seeing it and the 8X after having held it, I would definitely go with the 920 because, you know, Windows Phone is kind of like that cool, you know, techie operating system that deserves some like substantial, you know, different hardware. And I don't think that is found with the 8X. It's nice hardware, but it feels, you know.
It's and as we also mentioned on the call, it is quite a bit lighter than the Nokia, the Lumia 920. I mean, almost everything is lighter than the 920, but it's almost as light as a Galaxy S3, I think, the 8X. So that might contribute some to that cheap feeling. I'm just kind of riffing there.
That's true.
They're both running Windows Phone 8. They're both nice, bold colors. So I think the only differentiating factor to me is going to be how good is the camera. And front-facing camera aside, you know, if I can take a really, really beautiful picture with that nice high-resolution rear-facing camera, that's the tipping point for me. So I have to say that Nokia probably wins out in this match.
Yeah, so
I'd say so.
You'd go pure view on that new pure view, and plus, I mean, Nokia once again it's got that software package with Nokia Drive, with you know, whatever, Nokia Music, and a bunch of stuff that I think would be considered bloat by a lot of people, but is actually really useful. which I kind of took for a test drive when I had the 900 for a couple weeks, thanks to our friends at AT&T there. And yeah, I mean, Nokia's still got some stuff that really sets them apart. So I don't know. For me, it's still up in the air. I don't know. I'm going to buy one of them. This is a personal thing. This isn't like a review unit thing. Like, I'm going to buy one of them, and it's going to be my daily driver. I just don't know which yet. But so in that case, I think I want to say, to wrap this up sort of for me, kudos to HTC for surprising me, for coming to the market and saying, yeah, no, we've actually got something of value here, and we're going to maybe change your mind.
Yeah, and something I got to discover yesterday was Windows Phone 8 for the first time. I've never actually used it until yesterday. And, I always kind of saw Windows Phone as somewhere in the middle. We've got iPhone on the right, what you see is what you get. You've got Android on the left. You can do whatever the heck you want with it. And you got Windows Phone in the middle. You get some live information, but it's a symmetrical design. And when I saw Windows Phone 8 at first in screenshots and videos, I was kind of upset that the symmetry had been lost. I mean, you can make your start screen look pretty ugly in Windows Phone 8 if you really want to do so. Like, you could stack it with, if you use the little tiles, you'd have I don't even want to know how many, 25 little microscopic tiles that show you nothing. And but I think that's a good thing, and I think it's up to the user if they want to have 45 little tiles or 5 big ones and 15 little ones. And I think that Windows Phone 8 brings the platform a little bit closer to that left, a little bit closer to that Android, where I like to play because I like to change things. And so I after yesterday, I'm even more excited about Windows Phone 8, and I can't wait to use it. Joe,
do you think you'd, if you were to get one of these devices, I mean, do you think you would actually? I mean, would you? Is Windows Phone 8 doing anything, like Brandon just said, to entice you further as a user of another platform?
Well, just as far as hardware goes, both Nokia and HTC have definitely piqued my interest. I would love to see that kind of stuff on the Android platform. Mm-hmm. As far as Windows Phone 8 over Windows Phone 7, I like the live tile concept. I like getting information right on the screen. That's what I have my widgets for. I'd love to use it. I'd love to have just a week where I switched over entirely and sit down and use it. The thing that in every video that I see, every person that I see that has a Windows phone, that home screen is constantly jumping all around, doing all kinds of changing stuff. And every time I see something out of the corner of my eye, I have to look at it. It's just one of those things I have no control over. I look at it, and to me, having that sitting on my desk dancing around would be the death of me. I would die from ADD overload.
Joe's kind of like a cat. If you see some movement, you chase after. What was that? What was that?
Squirrel! What's going on? There's another dog in that car. Cool. Well, it'll be nice to. I can't wait until Windows Phone 8 launches. We talked a little bit about iOS 6 dropping. Everyone's excited about that. I'm very excited about Windows Phone 8, and I'm particularly excited because they didn't change a whole lot from 7. Joe, in contrast to Joe, hold on a second. I also have that attention issue where it's like, oh yeah, I have to look at this. That's a new thing. There's a new thing every 5 seconds. But for me, that's exciting. I'm like, because I live in a Star Trek world, and I'm like, yes, flashing buttons. That is what I'm into. Keep moving, UI. So
spin faster.
Yeah.
The Romulans are out ahead of you. There's another one that uncloaked, and you've got this little thing on your console blinking that says, oh, the coolant is down 2 degrees in the mess hall. Who cares? In the time it took you to look at that and see it wasn't important, you just got quantum torpedoes fired up your nacelle.
I'm glad that quantum torpedoes fired at your nacelle was said on this podcast. And
I check that off my list.
I'm also fascinated that there's a world that exists where coolant is required in a mess hall. Let's move on to Android.
How are you going to keep the stuff cold,
Michael?
Michael?
Keep that soup cold enough to eat. There's only borscht in the future. I want to kick off our Android coverage by leaping into something that I was supposed to cover yesterday and didn't. I got very distracted by the Windows Phone stuff. I just wanted to keep writing about the Windows Phone, and then I wanted to restart the Brutally Honest Question Corner with a question that's been very popular today about the iPhone. So
hang on. You just admitted that Windows Phone distracted you from doing your actual work on the podcast. I want to get that down for the record.
Boom.
It's those live tiles.
Oh, I just got owned. No, you're entirely right. It did. And I take full responsibility. But the problem is this left a hole in our coverage, and this was my fault. And the LG Optimus G dropped yesterday, or it got announced yesterday, or re-announced, I guess, in the United States. Joe... or Brandon, if you were dying to talk about it, because I would just somebody talk about this thing, because can someone tell me why I need to be excited about this? Because even if I had covered it, I think I probably would have fallen asleep in the middle of writing a piece about it. I'm not, I don't mean to be too harsh, but really, why do I care?
Snapdragon S4 Pro.
Okay, so it is the CPU story that is the most significant element of the Optimus G, and you just wrote a piece on the S4 family.
Yes, I did. There's 4 processors, one that's really lame and sucky and we'll never mention again, and then the other 3 that are all just completely amazing and 23 nanometers. And
they're manufactured on a 23 nanometer process when most things today are 28 to 32 to what, 40?
45, yeah. 45 is still a common one out there.
Right. So what are the others? There's Pro, what's the crappy one called?
I think that one's the Play.
The Play, and then there's what, Media and something else?
Yes. Yeah. I would have to go back to my article and get the chart on that.
It's not important. We'll talk about the Pro, the most beastly of them. I think you mentioned in your article at some point that theoretically a Pro could play 2 1080p videos simultaneously if you wanted it to?
The exact quotes are a number of. So that could be 1 or it could be 30.
That's my dream.
Some of the numbers that I've been seeing have said that they can play 4 full 1080p 30 frame per second video streams at the same time without a hiccup. Now, no one would ever do that except one of us to say that we could. Right. But it's the fact that it's got that much not only video processing power, but also decoding ability to be able to handle. I mean, that's just a huge number of pixels that it's got to figure out from a file someplace and decide how it's going to look on the screen and pop that onto the screen 30 times a second. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, no one's going to do that. But think about how much faster that's going to make everything else on the phone. If it can do that, open up your Gmail, scrolling around on a map, multiple tabs in a web browser. I mean, that's nothing. It can do that in its sleep.
Yeah, and you made a good mention also in your piece about of course we'd never watch 4 1080p videos at once. Or I think you used the example of gaming. It's like why should non-gamers care about this performance? Because I frequently have to ask myself this when we get into like really in-depth talk about chipsets and stuff. And I'm like, I don't play Call of Duty 18, so it's like I don't really care. But no, like. Because high performance stuff that requires high performance helps push the industry forward, because chip makers have to build stuff to accommodate those who do that stuff, and as a result we all benefit. So that makes a lot of sense. I actually liked your point there.
Okay, so I'm going to geek out on you just for a minute here.
I wish you would.
Move over to desktop computers. So this is now desktop now. When you've got regular desktop computers, you can play games on them. In fact, I'm a computer gamer over a console gamer, hands down. Mm-hmm. You always want to have a high-end graphics card. And those graphics cards are optimized for 3D, where you have perspective, where you have lighting, where you've got all this stuff. And your operating system itself, up until recently, has been 2D. So it hasn't taken advantage of all of that extra processing power that you can do with that GPU. In fact, up until very recently, the entire interface was not optimized for running through the GPU. It ran through the CPU. So all of that, hey, my game runs really fast, didn't translate into I can write a letter to mom really quickly in Word or surf the web really fast.
Right.
So what does this have to do with Pocketnow? These mobile operating systems kind of got the clue. In Windows, we now have GPU accelerated. We now have 3D. Great. Windows 7 does that. Windows 8, I guess, does it. I'm fed up with Windows 8. But Android, speaking just of Android, they now do that GPU acceleration in the core OS. So your home screen, your core apps, those are all GPU accelerated. So they're taking advantage of all the stuff that processor can do in games and giving that to you in everything.
Which is nice. Which is something that I think everybody was complaining about with OSs for a while there. I think in the WebOS community we were annoyed that the GPU that was present in the original pre wasn't even being used to run the OS. It was all running through the CPU, and that as a result we had these crappy animations. And I think Android people were complaining about that for version after version, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that all makes a degree of sense. I mean, in its implementation in the LG, the Optimus G. I mean, once again, this is an LG first, right? Because no one else has used this processor yet in a handset.
As far as I can tell, this is the first implementation of the S4, at least the S4 Pro, but I believe the S4 in general.
Okay, and I don't. What do you guys think? Is this going to be another case of LG saying, "Hey, we're first," and then everyone else saying, "Hey, that's awesome," and then kind of shrugging and going back to buying what they were going to buy originally? Because that's happened with LG in 3D, and that's happened with LG in what's the other thing that I mentioned on Monday? What else were they first to? Quad core. That's right. So
yeah,
what's up? Yeah.
LG. They look for these marketing opportunities to get a little bump, but then at the end of the day, it's still LG, and unfortunately, LG has a long way to go. Let me give you a couple of examples. This LG Intuition that I've received for review, I might actually send back early and not review it because I would probably give it a 1 out of 10.
This is the Optimus View for Verizon listeners.
Yeah, and it is just, it has no reason for being. It is the worst device I've ever used. It doesn't make phone calls well. It doesn't browse the web well. It doesn't fit in your pocket well. It does nothing well. It comes with a pen that doesn't do very much, and you have to carry it with you wherever you go. And yesterday, I brought the Optimus View with me, thinking that, if I had more time with the 8X, I might take it out and compare it. Who knows? I just brought it along in the gadget bag. And I found myself taking it out as I was meeting various people to say, I would take it out and say, you want to see the worst thing that has ever been released in the world? And I take it out and people would put it in their hand, this wide, massive device that is just so horrible. And they would scoff at it. They would agree with me, even if I didn't preface it by saying, want to see the worst thing that has ever been released. The reason that Intuition is so horrible, besides the things that I just said, it's not good at anything, is because the software is poor, the hardware's got some issues. There are spelling mistakes in the software. It looks like an experiment, and so I have very little respect for LG products, and I don't like their interface, and they have a lot to prove to be a first-rate contender. I mean, right now they're they're fourth, right, behind Motorola, after Samsung and HTC.
Yeah, something like that.
And, this Optimus G is just like, it reminds me of the Optimus 2X, right? Oh, first dual-core phone, great. Well, was that a good phone? I mean, it was, I guess, okay, but it was just nothing special. Anyway, I'm not excited about the Optimus G. I think the S4 Pro looks awesome, and I can't wait to see it, in the next Samsung or HTC or Motorola phone, but I can't get excited about LG. Sorry, LG.
Isn't that frustrating? Like when a company, whether this is actually ultimately true or not, I feel like it is. When a company comes out and they're like, "Hey, we're first," and they do this all the time. And Sprint does this in the United States, where they were first to 4G, sort of by a government mandate, but they did it with WiMAX, and of course that didn't really work out. And they were first to a bunch of other stuff, and it's like. People do exactly what you just said, Brandon. They look and they're like, "Oh, you're first, awesome! Yeah, that thing that you're like demoing right now, being first on, I can't wait until a more competent company takes it over and does it better." Like that, and that's sad because LG used to make awesome stuff. As I said in my piece on Monday, LG used to be really cool in the days of the dumb phone. They brought out some really, really awesome stuff for Verizon in particular. So yeah, it'd be nice to see them get back on their feet. But So, yeah, is there anything else about the Optimus G? What's up?
I think
It's destroying the benchmarks, by the way. Sorry, Brandon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Killing the benchmarks.
Yeah.
7,000, 7,200 in quadrant.
Yeah. So if you buy based on benchmarks, this is not a bad device to like look at for a second. Then in other benchmarks, it completely gets destroyed by everything else. Like in BrowserMark and SunSpider, it's just like a nasty, stupid, bad thing.
A lot of that's the browser that you're using, but
yeah, the stock browser. Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about that when we get to Razer I in a minute.
We're about to segue into.
Before we segue into that, I'm going to be the dissenting voice, and I'm going to come to the defense of LG.
Nice.
LG, the company, makes fabulous products. They make consumer electronics that I would not hesitate to buy and hang on my wall, to buy and use around the house. I've got some LG stuff inside the computer that I'm using right now. I mean, they make good stuff. They made good feature phones.
Chocolate.
Now, when we're talking about, smartphones, they're not really new to the game, which is kind of sad. But given their history of really good consumer electronics pieces, it's just a matter of time before they get the equation right and we see a really, really amazing device from LG.
So you think it's just a matter of time? You think that they're getting their ducks in a row still, and they're sitting on a pile of money because they're LG and they're a huge company, so they kind of have time to burn here, and we're going to see something awesome from them?
Well, time is against them, and they're fumbling right now. We've seen that with the last few things. Hopefully, this is the phone where they've turned it around. I haven't played with it in hand, so I can't give you a definitive yes or no, this is or isn't it. But inevitably, they are going to make a phone that is going to be every bit as good as everybody else and very possibly even better. And there may soon be a day where we have LG setting the bar for Samsung. I know that's going to be a Hail Mary, but I'm not going to put that out of the realm of possibility. They have the ability inside that company to do something truly amazing.
A vote of confidence on LG's behalf from Joe Levi. I like it. Thank you for keeping us balanced.
I hope you're right, Joe.
I do too, because I don't have anything against him. Certainly, I just want to be impressed.
I hope I'm right too, because if not, I'm going to look really silly if someone listens to this in 2 years and say, "Man, that Joe Levi guy didn't know what he was talking about."
Well, that's we're on episode 10. There's 15 hours of at least of all of us saying something stupid at least 40 times. Speaking of processors, let's segue into the Razer I here, and I don't want to spend too long on this, but it is a very interesting product. Motorola announced the Razer I the other day. It is essentially a Razer M with an Intel processor, which is not a first necessarily for smartphones or for Android smartphones, but it is a first for Motorola Android smartphones. It's powered by an Intel Atom, a Medfield processor.
Medfield.
Yeah. And it's a single core, but it runs at 2 gigahertz, which is also a first for mobile devices, I don't know. Joe, you start talking. The minute I start saying definite facts, some commenter comes along and is like, "You're an idiot." And I'm like, "You're right. I shouldn't be talking about chips. I'm sorry."
Well, the interesting thing about Atom is it was never really designed for phones. It was never designed really for tablets. I mean, that was kind of their target, but it's been more your integrated components. Some people thought, hey, this is the next Pentium. I'm going to buy this processor. I'm going to put it in my motherboard, and I'm going to be able to cut the power consumption of my computer down by at least half, probably more. And believe it or not, there are some adapters that you can use that you can plug an Atom processor into and then plug that into your motherboard, and there you go. And 20 minutes later, you might be booted up into Windows. So it's just really sad. When you get to integrated stuff like a NAS box or like a router or anything that you can plug in that just kind of sits there and does its thing and you don't care about it, it just works. Mm-hmm. That's where Atom is fabulous. So now moving this stuff over into tablets, solid state tablets, that's a logical progression. Moving it over into smartphones, okay, sure, smartphones are just small tablets, so let's go ahead and do that. Mm-hmm. The thing that makes this unusual is it's x86. It's not 64-bit, but then again, nothing right now really is in the mobile arena, but it's x86. So all the instruction sets for x86 stuff carry over.
So what does that mean for an end user like who's going to buy this thing, and what can you do with this that you can't do with, say, the Razr M?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. Is that true?
Yeah, that's exactly true. And the reason is they came out with this on an Android platform. Mm-hmm. Now, if I say, hey, it's x86, so now I know how to write programs for x86 architecture, great. I can now write for this phone. Sorry, guys, this is Android. Go over to Android Power User, watch the last couple episodes where we've talked about the JIT compiler and the Dalvik VM and Dalvik cache. All you've got to do is write your stuff in Java and deploy it. And it will work on any platform, whether that's x86, whether that's your Snapdragons,
right?
Whether that's some new processor that we haven't even heard of that runs a completely different instruction set. As long as that operating system and the VM are ported over to run on that particular instruction set, everything else is just going to run.
And it doesn't matter what's humming along underneath. It doesn't matter what.
It doesn't matter at all. So you have no advantage at all that it's x86.
So, all right. So Motorola and Intel have made a big deal about this. Of course, obviously, from a corporate standpoint, it's their first partnership and, whatever. But that kind of plays into some of the questions we were asking earlier in the week. It's like, why did Motorola and Intel choose this kind of unremarkable device to launch this partnership on? And I kind of just theorized that it's because they kind of wanted to soft launch their partnership on a not very blockbustery device. They're obviously not trying to move millions of these units.
No way.
So I just don't get why this is significant, except in the sense that for Motorola and Intel, for Intel especially, this is a nice foothold to have in the mobile world that they've been sort of absent in, right?
They're being modest, and I think they should be. I mean, as Joe just described, it doesn't seem like as a power user or someone who likes things to be fast, I would want to choose an Intel processor on my phone over a Qualcomm or NVIDIA chip. But that is so surprising to me because it's 2012 now, and we've been hearing about Atom for mobile for 4 years now.
Yeah, at least.
And it finally comes out, and there's just Intel does one thing very well, makes really great power-friendly processors that are fast, and it would be cool if the Razr I had 45 hours of battery life because of this processor, or it obliterated every benchmark. And first indications were that in every application in Android, the whole experience is just remarkably faster. That would be an Intel mobile chip debut. But instead, that is not the case. So they kind of did this soft, modest launch with the Razr I, and maybe they're working on something that does all those things I just said. But I'm kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, I mirror Brandon's thoughts exactly. This is not a remarkable device. It's not something groundbreaking. It's not something that's going to smash every benchmark. So they don't have to be looked at as saying, well, the reason it didn't do that was because of the processor. They don't have to get that black eye, but they do get their feet wet. They get their processor out there. They get it into devices. And really, I think this is going to be a good chip. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, there's only one problem that we've seen so far, and that's unfortunately with web browsing. The Chrome browser doesn't work on this processor. So that kind of breaks everything I just said about it just works everywhere. So consider that with a big fat asterisk after it. That's because of, I believe, and I haven't seen anyone who can contradict this, so if you can, please comments down below, let us know. But it looks like Google put some native code into the Chrome browser for whatever reason, to make it faster, to tie tighter into the operating system. I don't know. But it looks like there's native code in there, and obviously CISC code is not going to run on a RISC processor, or in this case, vice versa.
Clearly.
So they have to have a new version of Chrome to run on this, or they have to do what they've been telling everybody all along, and that's just write it using the normal tools and publish it so that it runs in the Dalvik VM just like everything else, and then it'll run just fine anywhere. But it's ironic that that's the only problem that we've seen is something that Google themselves wrote.
Yeah, I think this is chip talk that actually I want to continue having, but on a different device. Can I just kind of segue this into to another CPU?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have. I didn't expect it to be such a big like chip news week or like hardware news week, but it is. Samsung has announced that the Galaxy Note 2, which is coming to the United States, obviously, is going to be packing the Exynos 4 Quad.
Thank God.
Yeah. So, like previously, when Samsung brings stuff to U.S. shores, because of the U.S.'s like comparatively large LTE build out, I think this has been the obstacle that the only LTE compatible chips have basically been the Qualcomm S4, running dual core chipset. But now the Exynos 4 Quad has both LTE capability and a quad core processor.
And 2 gigabytes of RAM.
And backed up by 2 gigs of RAM. Well, and
that's going to be
just like the Galaxy S3 that's on U.S. shores right now. So, like, are you guys jazzed about this? I myself have found the performance of the Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 to be really awesome on almost any device I've tested it on. And I don't really need quad core unless it runs cooler, which it probably does because the S4 gets really hot.
It is a 32 nanometer, which means that it is going to be cooler than stuff that's bigger than that, theoretically.
Wait, but isn't the S4 like a 32 or a 28 as well?
The S4 Pro and really the S4 Prime and the S4 other one, those are all 23. So they're smaller. Everything else nowadays is it 23 or 28? Crap, now I've lost my chart.
That's okay.
So 32, that's still really small and it's really good. So it should be better for battery life. It should be better for putting off heat, which the hotter something gets, the faster it sucks down battery. Mm-hmm. So it should be a lot better. Previous generation of Exynos was 45 nanometers. So Exynos to Exynos, this should be quite a bit better.
I do hope so. Brandon, are you jazzed about it?
I'm jazzed. The fastest Android experience I still have ever had was CyanogenMod 10 running on the quad-core Galaxy S3, and it's disgustingly fast. It's just it's such a good experience. And even running TouchWiz Jelly Bean on the quad-core Galaxy S3 is pretty darn good. So this is going to be an awesome device. It's going to be an awesome device for power users. I wish the development community would do some more cool stuff with the S Pen, because as soon as you root the Galaxy Note, at least in the first one, the S Pen functionality didn't work. And with 1,024 levels of pressure on the Galaxy Note 2 and a better tactile feel and all that, I hope that some cool stuff happens with the Galaxy Note 2.
Me too. And and especially with the Note 10.1 with this kind of side-by-side simultaneous app running stuff, I feel like that kind of application is just begging for a quad-core processor, right? Am I completely off base there?
No, you're not. The unfortunate thing that they really got to cross that hurdle is you can't just have 4 devices, or excuse me, 4 apps that run on that. You've got to be able to launch anything else. Mm-hmm. That's going to kill it before anything. But that part right there, yes, you're absolutely right. The more cores you have, the better, because you're going to be devoting CPU cycles to each one of them, and you don't want either one to lag.
Right. Well, I kind of want to. We do have a hard stop today, everyone. So I kind of want to keep us moving here, not to be the. I really love to stay and talk about a lot of this stuff, but if we can segue really quickly into away from chips a little bit, but into another phablet, we have this sort of press render that we posted 3 days ago of this HTC 5-incher, supposedly.
Say the name.
Okay, the One X5.
No.
What?
Say the code. Say the code name.
I would love to tell you the code name. Unfortunately, my ears are blasting me with a commercial right now, and I don't know which one of my tabs it's coming from. I'm getting a Transamerica commercial in my head. I don't know why that is.
This episode of Pocketnow
brought to you by Sorry. So what is the code name? I was really thrown by that.
I'm being a second grader here. Sorry to any.
Is it the HTC Dix? Is that correct?
Yes, it is the HTC Dix. It's DIX, fortunately.
For short for Dixon Hill, obviously. That's hilarious. Yeah, this is the HTC Dix / HTC, possibly One X5. HTC maybe trying to make a phablet-like device. Would you? I'm looking at the press render here. If you guys, listeners, want to look it up, it's a story from the 17th. It doesn't look like it's been debunked. I don't know. Would you guys buy an HTC phablet? I would have said no right off the bat up until yesterday. But what they brought with the 8X and 8S excited me enough that I'm kind of a little semi-amped on HP again. What do you guys think?
The phablet market is wide open. Samsung right now has the upper hand because they were first and no one's really followed behind them. And I can't wait to see what HTC does with a phablet form factor. We already saw what LG did with it. They messed up. Motorola, I'm sure, will come out with everyone's going to come out with a phablet because if something sells millions and millions of units, then the next step is that the competition comes in.
Right. Joe?
So I'm looking at this, and this is just a press render, like you said. We don't have tight specifications on it yet, but I'm noticing that bezel around the edges getting smaller and smaller. So although we may be calling this a phablet, just kind of looking at it, it looks like that device may not be much wider than some of the devices that we're carrying around with us right now, which taking advantage of more of that bezel space to give you a bigger screen experience, I think is the perfect way to go to get larger screens into our hands without necessarily increasing the size of the device itself. It does look a bit taller than some of the others, and I have no idea why you'd still have capacitive buttons on the bottom of a screen that tall.
Yeah,
but
really.
it looks like something. Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in trying out. HTC, I've always loved HTC devices going way back into my Pocket PC days.
Yeah.
So I always like seeing what they have and what they're doing. I like the chiseled edges, the bevels. It's very One-esque, and it's something that I think would be really, really great, especially in a phablet form factor.
And we didn't see it announced at the event the other day, which obviously is it's just for Windows phones. So, is there any speculation on when they might try and push this? I mean, I feel like this if there's a press render and if this is real, then we would be seeing this before the holidays. I would hope.
Yeah, back to school. It's got to be back to school.
And
this is a college student
we're back
phone.
to school now, though. You know what I mean? Like back to school has already happened. So
This will be a holiday device.
Yeah.
I mean, I really hope for HTC's sake that they're doing what Samsung is doing and they're going to have a release on all 4 carriers. I mean, and by the way, that's a really amazing thing to note that Samsung's doing again.
Yeah, is it a simultaneous drop on all 4 carriers?
Yeah, and the unbranded device, the same device over every carrier, they have the carriers by the balls at this point. And that's exactly
Finally.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's exactly where Samsung wanted to be, and it's to the advantage of the consumer because the carriers can't say, okay, I had a keyboard here, do all this other stuff. But unfortunately, if HTC releases this device, it's probably going to be 1 or 2 carrier device, and it's right off the bat, it's going to be disadvantaged. But maybe it'll have some features. I mean, there's a 1080p screen. That'll be one thing to crush the note.
If anybody can see it, can see the difference rather. Okay, I want to jump. The thing is, there is one piece of listener mail I want to get to. So we kind of already dealt with iOS at the top of the podcast here, but we didn't. I don't want to do a couple of these, but I do want to touch on the iPad Mini real quickly. We're kind of graduating from phablets into smaller tablets. Is there any doubt now that this iPad Mini is happening? I mean, the leaks are just coming so frequently, and they're so consistent. And the thing looks as ugly, in my opinion, as the bottom of the iPhone 5 with the same connector. I mean, we're pretty sure this is coming out, yeah?
And it's scary that we're seeing the exact same period of time and types of leaks that we saw with the iPhone 5, which unfortunately means that there's a big problem with Apple's secrecy,
yes.
and which unfortunately means that we're going to see the device that we're seeing in leaks. And, that might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. It's a little disappointing. And it's going to kind of soften the message when Apple has a keynote event and says, hey, we've got this new awesome product. Everyone's already seen it. And it happened again. It happened with the iPhone 5.
I've read some very interesting speculation on that says that, interesting to me, that says that this, might be something that Apple is doing intentionally to kind of temper the media backlash from events like this where, like, the press is like, oh, yeah, thanks for holding this big event for, like, the 4S. We're not impressed, and here's why. And then there's a week of this kind of negativity. So the conspiracy theory goes that if Apple can leak enough of this stuff intentionally early, then it, like, moderates everybody's feelings, and they're like, oh, well, we know what's coming, and so maybe that gets reduced. I don't know if there's any...
Really? That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? But it seems like the kind of thing that just might be stupid enough to be true. I don't know.
That's crazy.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one who went there, Michael, because here I am. I'm thinking, what was new about the iPhone 5? It was a step up in the specs, and that was it. There really wasn't anything super special about it. Taller, faster, thinner, new port. It just wasn't exciting. So somebody at Apple is going, guys, this isn't all that exciting. We're going to take this, we're going to present it, and we're going to be booed off the stage. Now, of course, that wouldn't happen, but you've got this build-up. People are expecting Apple to come out with something new and fabulous and great and just blow our socks off. And I'm sorry, iPad mini, it ain't it.
No,
iPhone 5, no. So
I disagree. I disagree about the notion that just by virtue of being a smaller iPad, it could be made out of garbage cans, and it would be interesting because
the
iPad is a life-changing device. Tablets are life-changing devices.
They are.
And
agreed.
To take something that's really life-changing and make it more portable, so you can fit it into you could carry it around so much. That's amazing. So even if the leaks are true, the implications of having a smaller iPad are huge, and it's going to sell more than the original iPad, I think.
I think I would agree that is probably a very safe bet to make. I think it would be something different if you were talking about, say, the Motorola Zoom, where it's just like, hey, it's been this 10-inch thing that some of you liked, and here's the Zoom 7.
Yeah,
exactly. That would be one thing where it would be like, oh, stop it. But it's Apple, and it's the iPad. It is the category-defining instrument. People who took a pass on the Nexus 7 and the Kindle Fire because they love iOS, because they're not going to buy an Apple product, some part of them, at least half of them maybe, some part of their brain was like, yeah, but it would be nice to have a little more portable device if only it ran iOS. So this thing is going to catch fire. Yeah.
7-inch tablets, that's where it's at. I've packed around.
Completely agree.
Packed around 10s, they're just too big. 7's perfect.
And this is a perfect year for an iPad mini, not last year, not next year, because this year the world met the iPad 3, which is a heavier, clunkier, unwieldy device. And people are singing. They don't know it yet. They're singing for a lighter version of that.
Agreed.
So 2012 is a good year for the iPad mini.
Yeah. That's
Android did it first.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, and I carry around the Nexus 7 like all the time now, and it's not necessarily because I'm in love with Jelly Bean. It's because I love the form factor and I like the hardware. So I do also love Jelly Bean. But anyway, we're going to get to some miscellaneous news on the next podcast. I want to talk, once BlackBerry becomes interesting, it's starting to pretend to become interesting, and maybe they can become interesting before they're bought. But we'll talk about it next. I want to get to a piece of listener mail that actually is like 2 weeks old, but it's perfect right now because Joe is on the podcast, and I think this is a question uniquely suited to both you and Brandon, Joe. So this is from Christian from Germany, who thanks us for the podcast. I'd love to listen to it. Thank you, Christian, for listening and for waiting for this answer. Christian asks, how difficult is it for the manufacturers to build an update from, let's say, Ice Cream Sandwich to Jelly Bean for their phones? And how much real programming stuff has to be done by them on top of the stuff from Google itself? I was wondering, because being quite active in the XDA community, I was impressed by, essentially, he says, he was impressed by how quickly people cook custom ROMs there. And why does it take the companies so long to deliver an update, even when they have all their device IDs, drivers, proprietary things, etc., already around, and don't need to figure out how to bypass the bootloader, for example? How much do they have to do? Greetings, Christian. That is an awesome question. I think it's one we've all asked time and time again. Why don't we let Joe take a stab at this first?
Well, first of all, Christian, my wife was born in Germany, so we've already got a brotherhood there. On to the question. The question between ice cream sandwich and jelly bean probably isn't going to be as ground-shattering as you might hope. So let's take a step back to do gingerbread, honeycomb to jelly bean, and we'll just kind of skip honeycomb because nobody likes that. Mm-hmm. That was a major, major jump in the way the hardware was set up, in the way that the drivers that talk to the hardware was set up. Permissions, we had new stuff, we had new substructures that everything talked to without getting too techno mumbo jumbo here. There was a lot of stuff that had to change, and most of those were in drivers. When we're going from ice cream sandwich to jelly bean, we've already got that good foundation. There aren't a ton of changes as far as back-end stuff that has to be done differently to make stuff work from ice cream sandwich to jelly bean. So that's why we've seen, for example, getting out CM9 just took forever. It took forever for an ice cream sandwich cyanogen mod to come out. But as soon as we got source code, CM10 is, I'm running nightlies right now, and they're super, super stable. And it's been very, very fast. It hasn't been that hard. So that's the first part of your question. Going up to jelly bean is a lot faster from ice cream sandwich than any time in the history. Another point in your question, why does it take so long for OEMs to come out with these updates?
This is what I'm interested in, very much so.
And he brings up a really good point here. They've already got the drivers. They've got the source code to the drivers. They can just look at it, make any tweaks that they need to, plug it in and go. One of the major holdbacks for custom ROMers, aside from unlocking the bootloader, which sometimes is a very formidable task, is the camera, believe it or not. The camera drivers are all very, very proprietary, and they're usually cooked into that camera app. So unless you can get into that, they don't like releasing that stuff, which means now, great, your phone, your tablet, whatever works, except for the camera. Sorry, have a nice day. So Google's trying to expose APIs to make that a little bit better. The CyanogenMod team is working on their own APIs so that someday in the future, we might not need a super user permission to run CyanogenMod just to install it. The more APIs that we can get, the less proprietary driver support we need to have, and we can go quite a bit faster. So they should be able to do it quicker, the OEMs. That brings us to the next point. If you have one development team, and they're sitting down and they are writing firmware, they're writing drivers, they're writing OS, they're updating TouchWiz or SenseUI or whatever that fancy layer that doesn't even have to be there is. They've got these projects all slated out, usually a year in advance, on what they're going to do, the timelines. They've got charts up there to tell you who's on time, what the independencies are, what the milestones are. They're going gung-ho, working on the next version of that for the next device, which they have to meet by the next launch window so they can get it out for Christmas and actually sell these things. And now you say, well, look, Jelly Bean just came out, and we just released this device a couple months ago. Now we have to pull people off of those already tight scheduled teams where they're probably like me and not operating with enough manpower as is. Now we have to go back, open up another project, shoehorn that into place, and go through a huge round of quality control, usability testing, make sure that this is all nice and stable and sound, and then, you'd think, and then release it.
And then the carriers have to get their hands on it, and then the same thing happens all over again.
Exactly.
Right. And then
it's
that's
not just
even
the OEM, it's the carrier too.
Account if you're like building it for a specific network like Verizon Wireless or Sprint in the United States, which have not only the LTE stuff but also the CDMA codecs, which are so much more proprietary than anything else. I mean, there's like secret encryption and shit like that.
And then they call up the "Can you hear me now?" guy, who's actually been fired probably, and says, "Hey, we want you to travel around every state in this country. Make sure the software works because we don't want Verizon customers calling our customer support lines and clogging them up and costing us millions of dollars.
Exactly.
We have to make sure the software works. We're going to test it for 2 months, get it right thoroughly, and then we're going to put all of our apps on top of it, and then we're going to test it again to make sure it works.
We're going to test to make sure the bloatware doesn't break anything other than just make everybody's lives miserable.
We want to make sure the bloatware is bloaty.
By the time all of that is all done, that new product is not only been released, but it's probably also come down in price. And why don't you just go ahead and get that one? Because that makes the OEMs happy because they've been working toward that, and that makes the carriers happy. You know, the OEM gets to sell another device, which is good. The carrier now gets to rope you in for another 2-year contract, which they think is good. So the deck is stacked against the end user for getting timely updates or getting updates at all. The OEMs don't necessarily want to do it unless it's going to cause a media backlash because their 2-month-old device isn't going to get the brand new OS. And the carriers really, they could not care less. They
carriers
just want to sell you a new device.
Not in it to help anyone. Yeah.
Well, and that's why CyanogenMod exists. That's why AOKP exists. That's why all of these custom ROMing communities exist, so that you can take your old device and give it new life and make it last and last and last as long as you can keep that screen.
Well said.
I love that.
That is, yeah, I was going to say we need to print that on a T-shirt or on a banner. That's Christian. I hope that answers your question there. We were kind of butting up against a hard stop here. Joe, that was an awesome answer. I want to use our final piece of listener mail to kind of play us out. Or F it, we'll do it live. LOL. But before I do that, Brandon, Joe, do you have some closing comments?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Please.
It's a fabulous time to be alive. Looking at the previous course of history, I mean, look at what we've got today. Look at Pocketnow when we started way back when versus where we are now. I mean, we're debating which is better, a grid full of icons, a grid full of moving icons, or Android that you can do anything with. It's the full spectrum. We can do anything we want, regardless of what your style or preference is. There is something for you.
That's a good
it's
point.
There, it's now, it's today. You don't have any excuses. Come and join the party. It's over at Pocketnow.
That's nice. That's well said, sir.
I like that.
Me too. Brandon, we're gonna go out on that one.
I don't have any closing remarks.
That's terrific. That's awesome. I like that too. Great. Well, our final piece of listener mail, very brief, from Khalid. Hello, I absolutely love your website and your podcast. Wants to know if there's any other way to get our podcast on mobile by an app. He says he uses Double Twist and can't find our podcast. Yes, there is. Khalid, we are on Stitcher Podcast Radio, which is probably not available outside the U.S. now that I think of it. We'll send you a personalized email. But we are, of course, on iTunes, on the Zune Marketplace, and a bunch of other places. You can check out the post listing at Pocketnow for all the places you can get us, including a direct download and streaming. And we will endeavor to get on more apps. Khalid clarifies he is a listener from Kuwait, a small, rich country in the Middle East. We'll send you gas if you want. It costs less than bottled mineral water.
Wow, that's a good offer. Actually, we should write them back.
Just gonna say, for the guys on the team with cars, that's an awesome thing. Everyone, that is gonna do it. Thank you for writing in, Khalid and Christian, and thank you, listeners, for listening. That's gonna do it for us. Please be sure to find the Pocketnow Weekly and Pocketnow on Twitter, all over the place. We're at Pocketnow Tweets is the official account. I'm Michael Fisher. I'm at Captain2Phones. That's Captain, the number 2 phones. Follow me for absurdity and nonsense. Brandon Miniman is at Brandon Miniman, and Joe Levi is at Joe Levi. You can also find Pocketnow on Facebook and Google+. And if you like the podcast, please give us a positive review on iTunes. That helps us kind of rise above the others and become more visible, and that's important to us and to you if you want us to keep talking. So if you want to shoot us an email for us to answer on the air, we love doing that. When we have the time, please do so. The email address is podcast@pocketnow.com. Once again, as always, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Have a fabulous day.